Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Media Sustainability panel discussion. Thank you all for being here. I'm Fiona, I'm one of the planning directors here at Starcom, and I'm here to kind of ask some really hard-hitting questions, get your honest thoughts about media sustainability in general. Today we have...
I'm Curtis. I'm the out-of-home group director across Publicis Media.
Brilliant.
And I'm Nick, Commercial Director of Print and Digital at Starcom.
I'm Devi, Business Director at Starcom.
I'm Dan Coleman, I'm the Strategy Director here at Starcom.
I'm Jazz, I'm Head of Demand Generation at Starcom.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time. So I might just dive straight in with some of the big questions. One of the biggest challenges the sustainability movement has faced over the past decade has been of that pass the buck. We know there are problems, but the solution always seems to lie in someone else's remit. Government blames regulators, businesses blame finance. Different parts of the marketing industry could argue it is the responsibility of another. Do you feel in recent years there is a change in mentality, a greater collective responsibility coming through? And if not, what important triggers are needed to create a more connected culture of change? We are, after all in this together. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in this industry, definitely there is more of a sense of collectivity because the IPA are doing things, we're doing lots of stuff at Starcom, and I think it's just getting that start and pushing on really. And I think that's what you're saying. People have always passed the buck, but we're now, I think, as an industry, trying to get that buck moving down the hill, trying to get it going. Isn't it? It's like it may be a small beginnings, but I think we're really trying to get it going. And I think it might not be the clients might not be doing it, but we can offer clients solutions. They might be small at the moment, but they'll grow and they'll gather momentum. I think everyone needs to start somewhere. And I think we're starting to try to do that.
I think it's incredibly complex and there are so many moving parts to reducing the amount of carbon that we're producing in our industry, but it's very similar in our personal lives in terms of what everyone's now doing to impact climate change, the small changes we're making. So it's exactly that, what you said, Nick, that we're starting to make small changes in the way that we're doing in our personal lives as well.
Yeah, it's those small differences. It's like in a sports team, like you make those 1% differences, it all ladders up to making a really big difference. So if we all do something, then we could make a big change, I guess.
I was going to say, I completely agree with the point. Unfortunately, this is the bad side. I think it's reached the stage where it's impossible to ignore. We're seeing, the climate emergency, extreme weather, it might be drought, it might be the heat waves, it might be winters. I think whether it's governments, companies, advertising industry, consumers, we as private citizens, you can't ignore it. Everyone is discussing it. That's the terrifying bit. The good bit is that you no longer need to convince people that it's important and actions need to be taken. So now the conversation is shift from how do we inspire small changes to how do we make sure that small changes are happening across the board.
And I think our business has these values of being smarter, faster and braver. And I think braver is about us taking a lead and taking responsibility as much as anything. And I think what we've really, the big kind of thought, the process we've gone through is it's easy to forget in our day-to-day how influential we can actually be in this job. And I think there is a really great opportunity for us as a business to take a lead. So not just expect our clients to take the lead for us or not expect media owners to do all the heavy lifting for us, but actually to drive change and be that change. And I think that's where that braver thing comes in. And then faster is obviously the frustrating bit. So I think, what we want to do is as a business get faster in everything we do. We're obviously working in squads, for instance, to get to solutions much more quickly. And I think, it's not enough just to have these aspirations, although I think that's absolutely key to have the aspiration of being braver. But also it's in our power and in our remit to try and move change faster as well.
Yeah, I think I'll just add, it's a huge undertaking what we're trying to achieve. It's obviously worth it for everything that we are pulling towards trying to improve our sustainability across every aspect, every touch point of the supply chain. But there's also some huge upsides of this. This is about reevaluating what we do in order to make it better. And, there's some wider questions in regards to, cost and who owns that. But I think value and what's the value that's generated from it is something that we probably ought to talk about enough as well. And I think there's huge value in terms of, taking the risk ultimately and being vulnerable. And that's also part of what being brave is about.
I think you made a really good point then.
Yeah.
We're in a communications industry, and we push things and try to sell media owners in different plans all day. So we should be pushing, green credentials as well, and making clients sign up to them and stuff rather than waiting for them to come to us. We should be braver and push forward. And come on.
And the amazing thing is, I was part of this company for many years, then I took a little break from the industry, and then I came back because of how excited I feel of the direction that the agency is taking and exactly how much movement we have to make good changes and have the power and the support. And you genuinely feel that across the board, from senior leadership all down to when you're interviewing grads to join the company. It's everyone's priority, on the top of everyone's mind. How can we use our position and power to do good and bring forward ideas that will make an impact?
Cool. You all raised a really good point, and leads me on to my next question. One of the obvious challenges the sustainability movement has always faced is that the greener option isn't usually as effective or as cheap as one with sustainability in mind. If a green plan doesn't match the same ROI, what other strategies should we look to employ to ensure that every plan makes a difference? Are there different tactics, different mediums we can use?
I don't know, thought about it, because every media plan has ASBOF on. So we could easily add a green levy at the bottom. So even if the plan is not green, there could be an offset green bit at the bottom. It could be 1%, it could be 0.1%, whatever it could be. But every plan could then become green, even if you weren't choosing green media solutions. So it could offset it. And I think that would be a really simple way to do it. And then there's no issues then with media not delivering their KPIs. It's just a little fee at the bottom that everyone's going to pay. And we can push as an industry to get this done. And so therefore, it's there.
And I think ROI is quite a blunt measurement, and usually is over a certain time scale, and therefore, not always that helpful in terms of measuring how effective a campaign is. And I think it's one way of measuring it, right? I'm not saying that the whole industry needs to move away from any kind of concept of return on investment. And I think we need to be mindful in all of this that we do need to grow our clients' business. I don't think we want to get away from that. We do want to be efficient and effective in the media choices we're making. But I think there is more than one metric in the way that you can choose to decide on what is effective and what isn't. And I think, there is it's going back to that point about short term and long term. There is a longer term issue that we've got to fix here, and we've got to fix it in terms of economics and societal issues, because otherwise there'll be no growth, because there'll be no planet, right? So, I do think we also need to think about that in terms of, okay, it's all right to be growing, but unless we grow sustainably and grow in a way that allows our children and our grandchildren to actually have the opportunity to purchase goods in the first place, then there'll be no ROI whatsoever, right? So I do think we have to think about it in those terms a little bit as well.
But however, if we take a step back and we're in the client servicing industry, how are your clients feeling about a green plan or a green version, or have those conversations come up?
Incredibly receptive.
Brilliant.
And that's another exciting element of where we are and the position we can have in this discussion. It's no longer, a separate session. It's part of annual planning, ongoing activations. And yes, it might not be 100% there yet, because it's the balance between realities, not just on the client side, also on the consumer side. I think most people in this country are going through enough than to be, we shouldn't preach, we should find ways to simplify these decisions for them. But it's a great time to be involved and a great time to be part of Starcom and drive these discussions.
Yeah. In terms of each of your media disciplines, what are the most heartwarming or exciting developments you've seen as the industry rapidly innovates? What have you seen that has made you think, yes, we're getting there?
I think I'm working on the publishing sector, so there's Hearst have been one of the first people to commit to add net zero by 2025. They're doing all sort of green, renewable energies. All their magazines are recycled and things. So that's a huge magazine publisher, which outwardly you think not growing because they're cutting down trees and stuff. Actually, everything's getting recycled. And wood is actually sustainable. It's not like like raw materials. So it's a renewable source. So they're actually one of the greenest publishers out there. I thought it was really good that they've made a real stamp down and put their mark down to be the first person to in the publishing sector to adhere to add net zero. And I think only more will follow. I think in the industry there's less plastic wrapping. Everything gets recycled. So I think it's it's a really good start, and more people will once one person leads, others then follow, and I think it's and I think there's probably a bit of stigma around publishing as well. Everyone thinks it's dirty and stuff, but I think it could be one of the most sustainable medias out there, really, if everyone gets their act together. I think so.
I've been really pleased with how receptive clients are to not only when we're pushing, but often out there pushing themselves. So I'm really, really proud of working with Ferrero, who have been incredibly proactive in terms of thinking about sustainability and not in a kind of quick fix greenwashing way, but in a, how do we really put sustainability as a central value into our business and how that business works. So, for instance, they've not shied away from the debate on palm oil, which is not particularly an easy subject for them to it's been a bit toxic, but they are wanting to have an open discussion about the pros and cons of palm oil, and in fact there are a lot of pros, but rather than sort of just run away from it, they want to have that as an open discussion and bring that into the conversation. They're not afraid to, and that their Thornton's factory is very much on the way, if not already, to being carbon neutral, and that it's a real leading kind of part of their business. And I think that's key here. It's not just about talking the talk, it's about walking the walk as well, and I think that's absolutely crucial. I don't just see it with Ferrero, I've seen it with a number of our clients as well. I thought it was really exciting that someone like Mark Pritchard at P&G was talking about this at Cannes, but he was talking about it again by framing it in a way of, we're not just do-gooders here, we're doing it in a way that is trying to ensure that the businesses are still growing, because growth is good. Growth can allow society and communities to flourish, and that growth can allow us to go back to investing in the ways that we need to ensure that we do have a sustainable future. And I thought putting it in that kind of context is there's a huge role therefore for us as advertisers to work with our clients and advertising agencies and media agencies to work with our clients to make sure that we're communicating that in an effective way, and ensuring that becomes a broader message that sustainability might come at a cost, but it's a cost worth paying.
It's interesting because in the past, I don't think marketing departments would have talked to the core part of a business, which would have been talking about career issues, but now we're getting clients' marketing departments actively wanting to talk about it. I think that shows the change there. That's the shift. Right, it's not just about impressions or links or likes or whatever. It's about everyone's thinking about what can I do to help this.
It's becoming embedded in every part of the business. So for me, one of the newer social networks, Weir, as part of their media model, part of the media revenue goes towards carbon offsetting, but also towards charities as well. So it's actually part of their business model from the ground up, which is amazing.
I think there's been huge pushes across the at-home space in regards to just basically being able to be sustainable at each stage of getting a poster either to a local street or to get a video file or a static image onto a screen. There's always things that need to be done and enhanced, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about that later when we kind of address some of the stuff that's been happening in the trade press. But they are infrastructure businesses. They are part of public transportation networks, local councils, and it's obviously front of mind completely for government, and as a result of that, for many of the vendors within the out-of-home space.
I work with EON, AXA, and AB InBev, and I'm also super proud that not only is environmental and social governance a long-term goal, objective, vital element of all the discussions we're having, but on a day-to-day basis, it's part of all of the plans that we do just in the last week and a half. And this is what makes us come to work with a smile on our face. Just in a week and a half, we've considered out-of-home sites who act as insect hotels. And we know, especially when it comes to biodiversity and bees, how important that is. And realistically, it is the same, impact, but it's just a better one. We put on plans Good Loop and Weir both doing carbon offsetting across the board and charitable donations as if it's the most normal thing. It's not even debated, it's expected. And it's just exciting to see how easy it is to get that sign off because everyone is on board of the changes we need to make.
Fantastic. It's really, really great to hear, guys. What have you or your team learned as you've rolled out training programs, sustainable innovation, or discussions with clients and media partners? What has surprised you, either positively or negatively?
That it's all about progress versus perfection, because you have to be aware of the bigger picture and the challenges, and that these changes and shifts, take time, take investment. Even if the country, government, or businesses are ready, consumers might not be ready. So we should be conscious of the very complicated environment.
I think I've been taken back in terms of all social issues, actually how collaborative the industry is. It seems to be common ground that everybody can kind of unite and get behind. And I think everybody in the media and advertising space is all about demonstrating value. So it could be an ROI, as we talked about before, but also I think it's about the social value that we offer, or driving efficiencies in our business models, supporting clients in terms of their wider corporate social responsibility agenda. I think these are all ways that everyone seems to be kind of behind it, and in any way that they can do, and any way that they do is ultimately better for the wider good.
Just picking up on the next point about sort of increments, and also I think Debbie was saying not to be perfectionist. It's like, I think none of us know. It's like, it's new ground. It's quite terrifying. I think we've got to be able to make mistakes and understand that. I think we shouldn't be expecting to understand exactly how this is all going to work, because I don't think anyone really knows. So, and I think it would be a bit pretentious to say that, none of us believe that the advertising industry is going to save the world, right? But I do think we need to do our best, and to do our best, we probably need to make mistakes and learn, but improve as we go. And I think it's really, it's really encouraging to think about, I'm not sure a year ago we'd been talking about Good Loop, and I think now we all understand what Good Loop is and what they do. And that's permeated into all levels of our business. That kind of thinking, and sort of educating our people to think that way, I think is a really great, improvement in a relatively short space of time.
We can only affect what we can affect, so we can affect the media plan. We can't affect what the clients do, but we can nudge them and make them think about what the right thing to do. Like at home, like everyone does their own recycling. You sort of do your little bit and get along the way. But I can't do the recycling for my next door neighbour, for instance. So, but if I do what I can do, and then he might see, or she might see what I'm doing, and then you sort of nudging people in the right direction, aren't you? And I think that's what we're trying to do here: nudge people in the right direction.
Maybe you could become a binfluencer.
A binfluencer, that's a great idea. I mean, if you saw my recycling, it's immaculate. Yeah.
Love it. How is the challenge in 2022 different to any previous years? What new pressing contextual factors are emerging in the next few years that will increase the client demand for sustainable advertising?
I mean,
Well, we've just had the hottest day in UK history.
Open the window, if you look at it.
Europe is more or less burning. We've seen what's happening in Asia when it comes to floods, or in other regions when it comes to droughts. Australia is going through a complete environmental nightmare. I mean, wherever you look across the world, it is slightly terrifying. So that's the context that we're operating in. Of course, that doesn't mean that we should all fall within the eco-anxiety trap of it's so overwhelming, there's nothing we can do, because we happen to be in positions of influence, whether to be the binfluencer.
That's me, yeah.
I mean, it is true. We have to lead with conviction and example in our private life, how we operate within the agency, and the discussion conversations we have with clients.
I mean, I think houses spontaneously combusting, and that's
that really hit home, didn't it? You normally say on the European continent, wildfires. Oh, it's happened in Dartford. That's quite close to home.
Is your home going to be next?
Well, I hope not. Yeah, I've got the hose ready.
It's a scary thing. Yeah. I'd like to touch on the brewing culture war that is quietly growing. That green investments is too painful during the cost of living crisis and too expensive to be pursued. Certainly, scientists and other reasonable people argue that the opposite is true. Greenwashing and poor communication from businesses could easily fuel that dangerous new message. Whilst consumer concern for the climate is at an all-time high currently, we will undoubtedly see the consumer sentiment shift over the next 5 to 10 years as different priorities come into focus. How can businesses remain focused on a progressive agenda, and what new criticism, true or untrue, should they be aware of and prepared for?
I've got Nick.
I think if you're just offsetting or making your plans like carbon neutral, sustainable, that's not really greenwashing. Is me having an advert saying my business is carbon neutral. I don't do that. We're not telling the advertisers to do that. What we're saying is the part that we can affect, the media bit, we can make that carbon neutral. We can offset it. We can make it sustainable, which I don't think is greenwashing. As the clients have got to understand that it's not the advert you're putting out there. It's the behind the scenes we're trying to sort out. So they don't have to be greenwashing adverts. It's just the part that we can influence, the media bit, that can be carbon neutral. But if they're shouting about my media plan's carbon neutral and their back end's not carbon neutral, then that's an issue, and that's greenwashing, I think. So we're doing the right thing in our bit that we can affect.
An alternative version of that is if you're working on a Power of One client where we influence the creative element inside the wider Publicis agencies. What's your opinion on, I guess, more relevant for a DV who's maybe a client-facing role that, can we influence a little bit of the greenwashing, non-greenwashing element?
Completely, and I always take on board the braver mission statement of Starcom to have these discussions with clients, and often you get that, I'm just going to put something that is just out of the blue, and then, as I was mentioning earlier, they're completely receptive to it. With one of the clients, we are looking into sponsoring bike hire schemes outside of London, because it is very important to remember that this problem is not just London, UK, or European centric. That's often, I think, the feedback that we get, and the biggest issue is that we only care when it's too close to home, and that shouldn't be the case. We should be looking at the global issue too. But the bike hire scheme still delivers the sponsorship effectiveness from a media point of view, and actually funds a cheap, renewable transport option for people. And it's kind of that we need to put that extra effort, love, and consideration from our side in order to put forward ideas that tick multiple boxes for clients.
Can I just go back and build on what Nick was saying as well, before we get into sort of the creative bit? And I think there's a really interesting area about kind of church and state in media, which has always been a little bit of a grey area, clearly. And, the editorial and sort of the business side of media can often be separated. But what I think is really great about the UK media market is how that area has, in my time in media, has massively integrated. And I think that the media plays a huge role in deciding what the agenda is in terms of things like the culture war and things like consumers' understanding of kind of quite complex issues in and around sustainability. And I think our job as media buyers and planners can be to have those conversations with our media partners and think about how we can improve that situation. And, I think there is some troublemaking in terms of going on in media in terms of trying to create a culture war. And I think we shouldn't really be standing for that, to be honest. This is my own personal view, I must say, but I genuinely think I take every opportunity I can when I'm talking to certain media owners who I don't think are displaying the best behaviour to say, well, I don't, to call them out on it and say, I don't really think we should be supporting you, to be honest. Now, that is a controversial view. I don't think that's Starcom's view necessarily, but I do think that we have a responsibility to at least be considerate of the kind of media environment we're putting our media in. And I think we owe that to our clients and we owe that to our consumers. And I genuinely think as well that you have much more effective advertising in trusted contexts where media isn't, necessarily troublemaking, as I put it. So I think there is a big opportunity now. Obviously I don't think I could be the judge and jury, nor should I be, but I do think it's at least worth having an area of consideration in terms of where we are investing our media and what kind of partners we want to work with going forward in terms of this as a context. But you said yourself, it's on almost every kind of audience work we do, or any kind of when there's a priority of what consumers are most caring about, it's coming out on top, right? This isn't like this isn't a small kind of minority issue anymore. This is top of most people's minds, not least given what we've just been talking about in terms of circumstances around the world. So, we can't really, I don't think, afford not to start being a little bit more forceful in that, because I think consumers expect that of us. And I think we will have more effective advertising as a result of considering, our partners and what they're saying and what kind of context they are providing us with.
So I'm going to contact you soon because actually PGOne has spoken to us on the back of numerous meetings on which environmental social governance has been at the forefront to create an ethical or conscious marketing framework. So we almost, whether it's a guidance or a cheat sheet of media owners or principles, just to showcase who actually is following suit on this journey to try to do better, progress versus perfection. And the same way we hopefully wouldn't vote and use our vote in society for someone that doesn't care about sustainability, we should almost maybe make a point of, unless you're coming with us on this journey, whoever that partner, media owner, doesn't matter is, you're falling behind. And that doesn't mean we should be attacking anyone or any wars, because it's not that easy or fast, but we need to put whatever pressure or inspiration behind that change we can.
There is scrutiny now, that's the thing. People have access to so much information. They can identify if there is greenwashing at play, and that's something new and that will increase in the future. Everything can be fact checked, and people are able to vote with their money as to what they're purchasing, and people are being more sustainable in their purchases. And that's only going to increase as well. Younger generations are looking for sustainable ranges when they're going shopping.
Yeah, like in society these days, you're right, you've got to call people out for injustice and things that happen. The same with sustainability. We need to start, as you say, call the media owners out. And we're not saying that's our top policy, but if you feel strongly about something, then you should go, well, I don't think you are doing right, and call them. Because the only way things change is by calling people out, holding them to account, isn't it? Really?
I think so.
I think it's probably stuff that as an industry wider we can do as well to reassure the public about, the messages that we put out there. And I think, particularly I guess on the media side, we kind of, if my explanation of what I do to my parents is anything to go by, they don't really kind of see us or know what and understand what we do as part of the overall process. And I think actually, as we've done in other cases, when the industry comes together in order to communicate the value of something, sure you're going to reach some cynicism and some skepticism, but I think as you start to demonstrate with proof points and say, where messages are truthful and honest and where they are untruthful and dishonest, you're going to get people alongside you rather than opposing or challenging you. So openness is what I'm basically saying.
Thanks. Our hypothesis is that marketing will need to address some of the bigger, more fundamental issues around consumption. Society will need to change the pace, or at least the way that we currently consume new products and services. What are your thoughts on the future of marketing and the responsibility that advertising plays in adjusting customer and business expectations?
I think the metaverse has a really big role to play in this in the future, something that we should definitely be thinking about, not just from the perspective of everything that you consume in the metaverse could potentially be greener and more sustainable. I think there is a whole issue of, is the metaverse and running the metaverse and service sustainable? But there is a potential for showrooming on the metaverse. So you could identify products you want to purchase in the real world in the metaverse first. You could design a car before it's actually produced, so there's less wastage. You could consume NFTs. You could buy designer gear in the metaverse and consume it in the metaverse rather than in the real world. So there's a whole range of opportunities in the metaverse to turn consumption into the virtual world that could enable a more sustainable lifestyle.
Yeah, I saw a guy from Snapchat at IAB Engage who was talking about, he said everyone's got by the front door the dirty little parcel that's going to be sent back. You buy 3 shirts or 3 dresses, you try to want to send them back. He said, but what you don't know is that most of that goes straight to landfill because it costs more to repackage it than to send it out. So he said we can use the metaverse for good, so you can try clothes on in the metaverse and say, actually, this colour suits me more than others. So therefore, that's a good way of reducing consumption, isn't it? I think that's a really good point.
I guess there's real life as well, right? And actually
there are shops you can go to.
Right?
As long as you walk there,
sustainably, you get.
And you support the high street, so people actually have jobs.
Yeah, and back in COVID when we had shop responsible was a big thing. We were trying to not do that over consumption. It's just have what you need. And I think a lot of us, the partners and clients, were behind that and supported that. So I think we're not we're in an industry where, yes, people need to consume things, but we don't want to over-consume, really. And I think it's trying to temper those sort of two messages, isn't it?
And it links back to the earlier point as well, doesn't it, about sometimes it can be a bit more expensive, and that is a problem, and I totally accept that's a problem. But if you take fashion, as we're talking about, for instance, if you're buying fast fashion and you can only wear it 3 times, and it's 50% cheaper than something you can wear for 3 years, then actually, and it also ties into the kind of cost of living crisis, right? It's much more economically effective for you to buy something that's sustainable and that you can wear or use for much longer than that kind of fast fashion in this case. And I just think that again is a big job for us, because I think often what we're about is creating premium, sort of a more premium brands and creating advertising often works when it's creating a greater margin on business rather than necessarily greater demand, right? So, and I think that's where we can really kind of hopefully help in terms of advertising more sustainable products that are more beneficial for consumers and actually more cost effective as well. So I genuinely think there's kind of a big area there for how advertising.
So advertising them can maybe show the quality of the product.
Exactly.
It's the longevity. This is sustainable cotton. It's thicker. It's got a higher thread count. It's going to last longer. So they can sort of promote slightly different bits of the products they're asking about. So to say it's going to last longer.
Exactly.
I think that translates back into media as well, quality and
yes.
quantity.
I completely agree. That's a great point. Yeah.
And purpose driven as opposed to just, reach and frequency, obsessively focused. What are we actually trying to achieve? What message are we? Or if we're going to be doing advertising space, are we inspiring consumers to make an attainable, simple change? We're running a campaign with Good Loop again, but an amazing partner who I've been working since 5-6 years ago when no one wanted to activate on such stuff, but nowadays, again, the conversation has shifted. And with one campaign, we are getting the impressions and the reach. It's generating funds for charity, so the consumers who are being exposed to this ad are feeling like, okay, my eyeballs are seeing something that is doing good. The funds are generating money for solar electricity to assist with renewable energy. And it's also supporting ABMF's overarching goal of making sure that every pub in the UK is powered by solar. So again, one activation with a display team can do so many different stuff. What if we try to make sure that at least 10% of our media plans by the end of the year are ticking multiple boxes?
Yeah. I mean, one of the fundamental things we do is budgeting. How much is enough? How much is enough to hit your objectives? And what do you do if you do have surpluses? Like, where is it that you can reinforce or focus your energy in terms of hard to reach audiences or broader, wider objectives that are more sustainable, that might drive long-term growth beyond your short-term activation as well. So, us initiating those conversations about, I guess, frugality, right? Like, how can we be a bit more savvy, especially in light of kind of economic forecasts as it stands at the moment, is a way for us all to be more sustainable.
Nice. Our sense is greenwashing is really intentional. What are the obvious concrete steps to ensure a campaign with a sustainable message can get over the line and avoid industry criticism?
I think we really all believe that that perfection can stand in the way here, and that what we need to do is understand that we're on a journey and we're setting it on course. I think quick wins are still important, but greenwashing is a massive problem. And just being, again, like I'm saying, pretentious, and consumers are going to see through it. We all see through it. We're all consumers ourselves, right? It's awful when it happens, and you just go, that's not authentic. That's not really what you believe in. But I think the way around that is to set course now and to tell, to say you're on a journey, to explain what you're doing, to describe what the end goal is, and then maybe demonstrate that there are, the small points of the road that you've already got to, and taking it that way. But I think that's the key here, is like getting away from that kind of, that horrible kind of feeling of you're being sold to, and it's just kind of a bit, can I swear, a bit bollocksy. It's like, I think we just get it straight away, and we've got to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah, I guess advertisers have got to think I'm going to get critiques on whatever I put out.
Yeah.
So make sure my claims are substantiated.
Yes.
You know, don't just
Yeah.
send something out that's just not true. I mean,
Yeah.
that should be like ASA's job as well. Like, you know, you can't just say things which are false, which it should be about green issues as well. You just can't do that. It's just,
For me, the solution is actually twofold, potentially. Not being afraid to fail, because if we are, then we're definitely not going to progress, let alone become perfect one day. And diversity and inclusion is super important in order to make sure that we're constantly sense checking about that greenwashing. To come back to an earlier point, it's easy sometimes to see campaigns that go wrong from, of course, not our agency. And immediately think, was there no one in the room that raised their hand to show how incredibly unsensitive, London-centric, media-centric, or European-centric this idea was? And that's why diversity and inclusion is so key, because we all bring our experiences. I'm originally Eastern European, so there was a big part of me that, due to the geopolitical changes happening in the 90s, thought that consumerism and over-consumerism is that sign of progress and success. So when I first started living in the States or in the UK, when I was a teenager, buying stuff often, I used to feel embarrassed of some of my background, childhood. The fact that my grandparents and great-grandparents had their own gardens, the fact that they stored rainwater to utilize. And now, as I'm older and all these things are coming into the fold, I feel so proud that I have that background and I know how to take care of, a little garden and herbs. I know how to be frugal. And it's actually quite cool to be able to share those experiences with someone who hasn't had to. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong or right. It's just we come together, we communicate, and share all of our backgrounds.
Really love it. Really love it. When we think about the direction that most media is going, it is, of course, to be digitised. That means digital out of home, streaming rather than traditional viewing or listening, metaverse events rather than physical ones. There are some obvious sustainable benefits to digitising media, but also some negative ones. What are your thoughts on both the positive and negatives, and where should we be focusing our efforts?
Sure. Well, look, across the nettle, there's been quite a few stories at the moment, especially around the emissions of digital screens in out of home, and it's a challenge, I guess. And I think there's no hiding with out of home. That's what makes out of home great. It's a public-private partnership. Half of the money that is spent in out of home goes back into public infrastructure and the industry overall, according to PwC study that was recently done for the second time. And I think as a result, maybe it's something as well about the fact in terms of specifically posters as well, like, it's a communication for protest, especially against what's seen as authority. We're talking about public infrastructures and local councils as well. They're obviously huge capital investments, these screens, and they do get renewed every, I think, 5 to 8 years is generally the life cycle of a screen. So in terms of the efficiency of the actual screen itself, that obviously improves slowly over time. But the screen itself and the message on the screen is only part of the overall supply chain that's being done. Screens versus people driving around in vehicles posting paper, and even that paper is increasingly being recycled stock, for example. There's obviously the removal of paper as well after a campaign ends as well. The campaign life cycle doesn't actually just finish, or the supply life cycle of a campaign doesn't just finish when people stop seeing it. There's actually a whole process that happens after that. Most of the major media owners are quite down the line in terms of being carbon neutral because of this requirement, I guess, of sustainability as part of their tenure for the franchises for the local municipalities that they are representing. But I think also to not waste not waste the calamity. It makes everything more front of mind for everybody, doesn't it? And I think we can always be doing more. We always should be doing more. And putting pressure in terms of our industry to improve, to maybe change those screens and renew those screens sooner rather than later is all part of the improvement.
I think wastage is a big issue in digital media as well. I think it goes back to your point about quick wins. How can we reduce the amount of wastage on a media plan? Thinking about being smarter with our targeting, thinking about, also behind the media plan, thinking about how is creative being delivered, thinking about the ad serving, the SSPs involved, thinking about how is creative being transferred. Are we using heavy creative? Are we using shorter assets? All of these small quick wins can make a difference to a digital media plan to help improve the amount of carbon being produced by it. Even things like frequency capping is something that we need to build into more of our media plans to make sure that there is a better carbon outlook.
What did you say about emails?
Well, I've read the stat that said like every email produces 1 gram of carbon. So if you think about it, there's like 65 million people in the country. If you did 1 email less a day, that's like 65 million grams of carbon you could remove from the atmosphere. But I think every medium has got its pros and cons. But I think when you scratch a little bit deeper, everyone's trying to do something as well. It's a collective thing. You can't just go, out of home bad, or TV's bad because they have locations in Jamaica where they're filming the production or something, or digital's bad. Everyone is trying to do little bits, and it's again back to that first point of incremental gains, isn't it? Trying to clean up their own bit and trying to make it a little bit better. I think is what we're all trying to do.
Absolutely. Carbon calculators. Where are we in the journey to really understand the carbon calculators from the media industry?
It's early days, isn't it? I think, but it's great to be in the early days. Everything starts from somewhere, and I think we'd all agree it's probably not perfect at the moment, but it's a good starting point, and it gets people thinking about what's going on. And I think that's the most important thing, people to think about the consequences of advertising. And then as it progresses, you can get better data, and it can be much easier. And something easy we can probably apply then to campaigns. At the moment, it's probably not there, but it's a great step, and it's great to be starting off there. I'm great in my lifetime now that we're going to start talking about carbon calculators, which I think is the most important thing.
Yeah.
What gets measured gets managed.
That's true. Yeah. All of my clients want them on plans moving forward, so that's a good start. Yeah. Everyone's aware that it's not perfect and it's not ideal, but in order for it to get to that stage, it needs to be adopted on a scale that allows it to improve over time. So.
Cool. And last question, just to wrap this up. What one thing would you like your clients to be asking us when it comes to sustainability in the next 12 months?
What is the minimum number of assets I need for my campaign to be a success?
I think just saying what can I put on my plan? Why is it not on my plan? If it's not my plan, I want them to ask me as well as us pushing back that way. It needs to be a two-way thing. So them to ask if it's not on my plan, how can I get it on my plan?
I think how can we work better together in order to do more sustainable work, and also then how can we communicate that and promote that to inspire others as well.
I'd like them to say, I want you to be brave and to make me feel slightly uncomfortable, but to really be pushing, and for Starcom, I would welcome Starcom's role to be really trying to push this agenda and go to a stretch sort of situation where we try and move a bit faster.
What everyone said, plus the same way we as consumers and our clients, private citizens as well, have all become more conscious, considerate, and scrappy. How can we do the same with our plans? Of course, KPIs such as talkability, viewability will always remain, but can we put purpose and conscious ethical marketing at the forefront too?
Well, that wraps up my session. So thank you everyone for answering these little tough questions, and
Thanks for hosting.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.